Dennis has been with SoCalGas most of the time since 1994. He took worked for another company in the energy industry for a few years. Since 2012, he's been our president. Since 2014, he's been our chief executive officer. So please join me in welcoming Dennis Arriola.
Thank you, Rob, and good afternoon. How was lunch? Good. Well, we've got the dedicated few that are left here. It's been a good conference, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. Can you hear me back there? Okay. You know, I had been invited last year to speak at the West Kern Petroleum Summit, and I think it was one of the first times in a long time that a rainstorm closed down the grapevine. You may remember that there were some mudslides and everything. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it then. But I tell you, what a week we've gone through. No more mudslides, but some people would call it a landslide. Before I get there, let me do this. Let me say to Richard and Tamara and to the crew from the EDC, thank you for what you do. The EDC and its role is so instrumental in representing all the companies that are here and other members of the community in really helping to tell a story. Tell a story about the wonderful things that are happening in Kern County. And I think the story needs to be told even more often. And I think for it to be effective, all of you have to continue to tell that story. Because you've got wonderful resources, both from what's in the ground and what's coming out of the ground, but more importantly, you've got wonderful resources in people. And we had a chance to see some of the students that are here today. And so Richard, Tamara, and the rest of the EDC team, thank you very much for what you do. We're going to continue to be, hopefully, a big part of the solution going forward, but thank you to you guys. So back to the election. I bet if you went to each of the camps and asked them for one word after the election, one word that you could actually print, they probably wouldn't be too dissimilar. I think if you went to the Clinton camp, it would be, what? If you went to the Trump camp, it would be, wow. And then if you went to the camp that was supporting the proposition to legalize marijuana, it would be, awesome, dude. Well, I think it's interesting because regardless of who you were supporting, we've got one president now. And it'll be interesting to see what happens from an energy policy standpoint coming out of Washington. I think some people think they know, but I don't think we really do. Having said that, the direction that we've taken over the last, say, 10 to 15 years in California, I don't believe is going to change. You may be happy with that or you may not. But I think California has been a very progressive leader when it comes to environmental goals, and I think that, if anything, we may actually see some of that accelerate. And I think the key is, for all of us that are in the energy industry or that are serviced by the energy industry, how do we make that leadership, and how, if it does accelerate, how do we do that in a smart and balanced way where we can continue to have a vibrant economy, where we can continue to employ more people, and we can continue to enjoy the lifestyles and be able to live in the state that we all truly love. I think one thing's really for sure, though. Kern County gets it. Kern County, you're rich in natural resources, you're rich in human resources, and it's about a balance. We saw the wonderful presentation and video on solar by SunPower. We heard what's going on in Los Angeles from an incubator standpoint. Wind is wonderful. Oil makes sense. Natural gas makes sense. It's about a balance. It's about a portfolio. And I'm here to talk to you about what role we believe, and I think many of you believe, natural gas plays as part of that portfolio. Because there are people out there that talk about natural gas as a bridge fuel. Whether you think it's a 5-year bridge or a 20-year bridge, we don't necessarily agree with that. And we'll tell you why we think that natural gas is part of the solution going forward. And if you look at the energy future in California, you could either be pessimistic or optimistic. It really just depends on your perspective. I guess I fall into the optimistic camp. And it's not because I'm in the energy industry. I think it's because, again, you look at the students that we have here. You look at the challenges that we have from a societal standpoint, but also the opportunities. What we're doing every day with technology, how we're using actually less energy and more efficiently, how it's becoming cleaner. And that's not just on the solar and on the wind side, but you heard earlier how the footprint of the oil industry and the natural gas industry is getting better. We're using less land, we're using less water, we're having a cleaner air system. I grew up quite a while ago in Los Angeles, and I remember there were days when I was in high school where you would come out and you could smell and taste the air. You didn't necessarily know that there were mountains out there because of the smog. And still here in Kern County and parts of Los Angeles and parts of Northern California, we still have air challenges. We're doing a lot about it, and there's still more to do. But I think that if we continue to focus on how we use technology effectively and how we can think about solutions and not eliminate opportunities, I think that's when society really starts to propel itself even more. So you know about what energy does in Kern County. You know about the benefits that the energy industry brings, and that the fact that energy and natural gas is the #1 in terms of gross domestic product and from a tax contribution standpoint. And natural gas plays an important role there as well. It's not only a significant source of employment in Kern County, but it also provides great jobs in related fields that require moderate to higher skill levels in technical and engineering. And in fact, in 2014, there were approximately 50,000 direct and indirect energy-related jobs in Kern. These are good paying jobs. They're jobs that help people buy homes. They're jobs that help and enable parents to send their kids to college, which is probably going to be important since Bernie wasn't elected. We're going to have to pay for them to go to college now. Now, the other thing is these are jobs, you can't export them to another country. They're here, and they're long-term in nature. They help us build and maintain a solid middle class, and they help us all be part of the California dream if we decide that we want to participate. Now, before I go on with the natural gas story, what I wanted to do, because I've had questions from some of you about the gas leak that SoCalGas had at our Aliso Canyon storage field last year. This was a really serious incident, and I was involved with it from the first day until we plugged it. And I got to tell you, we have a wonderful team that gave up a lot to deal with a very serious incident. And we took the incident very, I mean, we took responsibility for it. We didn't shy away from it. And it's been just a little bit more than a year now since the leak was detected, and it was permanently sealed in February. And it was an event that truly required some of the world's best engineers and other technical people, many who actually came from Kern County. And you know, we thank them and their families for the sacrifices they made. They gave up holidays, they gave up birthdays and anniversaries. And it was a very complex project that unfortunately took longer than anyone would have wanted and impacted a lot of different lives. And it's something that you know, we tried to make up by taking care of people, relocating them in hotels and apartments and homes, providing them food and transportation and everything. Having said that, we know it was an inconvenience. But I'll tell you, there's been a lot of work done since then. But it started with accountability. And we stepped up and we said, we're accountable and we're going to take care of this. Since that time, we've made substantial investments, comprehensive infrastructure investments. We've replaced all of the tubing in each of our storage wells there, over 40 miles of new steel pipe. We've installed new technology and sensors to monitor should there ever be some type of leak in the future. We've improved our communications with our stakeholders so that they know better what's going on a timely basis. We learned a lot about ourselves. We learned how we need to be a better community partner, how we needed to be more responsive, and hopefully more proactive in the future. So all this work has been going on, and as a result, obviously a lot of new laws and regulations came out. But on November 1st, we finally were able to file a letter with the Division of Oil, Gas, and Geothermal Resources, or DOGGR, and the Public Utilities Commission requesting approval to start the reinjections. And as you can appreciate, for people that still live around there, they're not real happy. But the natural gas that is stored at that facility, and that facility has been around for decades, well before any of those homes were there, is essential, not just from a natural gas perspective, but from an electric generation reliability perspective. So we take it very seriously. We've made the investments, we've tested, and we're going to continue to be transparent, working with the regulatory bodies so that they know what we're doing, and so that we can, in the future, basically continue to provide service, gas, and electric generation service to more than 21 million consumers and businesses. From an environmental standpoint, we also recognize that this had an impact. And we stepped up, and in fact, before the leak was even finished, I sent a letter to Governor Brown saying that we will, even though we're not required to from a legal standpoint or from a regulatory standpoint, we would step up and mitigate the environmental impact. We didn't know how yet. We didn't know how much it was going to be. But we felt that if we were truly a steward of the environment, it was incumbent upon us to do the right thing. And we stepped up. And we're in the process of looking at different projects today. And in fact, yesterday, I was out with several of the dairy owners here in Kern County looking at opportunities to work with them and to address the methane issues they're having to see if there's some type of win-win situation. So what are we doing? What other things are we doing to address methane emissions? Because you've heard that it's a huge problem in this country, but I think it's important to put it in context. Methane emissions from natural gas companies like ours throughout the country make up less than 1% of all methane that is emitted into the environment. There are certain organizations, and I've heard one of our previous speakers talk about activists that would say that, they're using kind of some magic numbers and everything, but it's less than 1%. Having said that, there's things that we can continue to do our part and be part of the solution. An example, a couple of months ago, we successfully tested a project where we're capturing natural gas that's being emptied from a pipeline that we're working on. Because historically what we would do is basically, in a very controlled manner, release the gas. Now what we're doing is we're taking canisters and capturing that gas and re-injecting it in other parts of our system so it can be used. And we did that in the city of Tascadero just a couple months ago. In addition, we're looking at other ways that we can capture methane through infrared detection, through fiber optics, sensors, and believe it or not, we're even working with drones. A lot of you might think that in Southern California we only use drones to track the Kardashians, but no, we actually use it to look at gas pipelines as well. So there's a lot going on there. Now let me get back to the role of natural gas. It's about fuel diversity, and it's about approaches from a portfolio perspective. And there's certain things that we're doing that I'm actually very excited about, and our team's excited about, and we've been talking to some of you about. The first is, what can we do, what pathway can we set to reduce air pollution and greenhouse gases in the transportation sector, which is the largest greenhouse gas emitting sector in California? And what can we do to continue to decarbonize? And if you haven't heard that word, you're going to hear more about it. But to decarbonize electricity through distributed energy. And also, how can we decarbonize our own pipeline through biogas or renewable gas? And then lastly, and maybe this is a little bit more futuristic, but it's what I'm going to be looking to our students to start working on, is how can we use the abundance of renewable energy, whether it's solar and wind, when we're producing more than we can use in our system, how can we use that to actually create more renewable gas? And there's a concept that's actually being done in Europe, and SoCalGas is working on a couple projects right now, which is called power to gas, and we'll talk about that. Now, for a while, there's been a drumbeat in California to basically electrify all the applications, whether it's transportation, residential, commercial, and industrial. And again, it's about a bridge, they say. It's about let's get rid of all fossil fuels. Well, obviously, I don't buy into that, because I think that given the abundance of energy that we have here domestically, given the cost of it, given how we're continuing to make it cleaner and make it more reliable and safe, we've got to figure out a way to take advantage of those resources in a respectful way of the environment. And it is being done, and it can continue to be done that way. Now, a lot of times people will talk about, well, but let's forget about that. Let's think about the technology that we're going to have in 20 or 30 years. I got to tell you, I am fed up with people saying, let's just write off a generation of people and we'll go into our think tanks and figure out something 20 or 30 years from now. We've got people today that are suffering from asthma. We've got people today that can't go outside because of what's going on in the freeways or in the ports. There is no excuse that we can't take advantage of the resources we have today in a respectful manner, using technology and continuing to push that. And that's something that we're continuing to not just do, but we're going to continue to invest in. An example, back in Los Angeles, there's a community called Boyle Heights in East Los Angeles. Over 90% of the community are made up of Latinos and other poverty-stricken minorities. This is called a toxic hotspot. It's surrounded by 4 freeways. You can't go out there during the school day because trucks are going through. So what are we doing about this? There are advancements now in technology where heavy-duty trucks were able to use new engines that are basically near zero emissions. And when we talk about near zero, we're talking about the same level of emissions that would be put off by an electric generation facility. So we're not talking about zero yet, but we're trying to figure out how can we get there. And these new heavy-duty transportation engines are available today, and the costs are going to continue to come down as we introduce them. And as we push forward for more infrastructure to fuel these. It's kind of the chicken and the egg. A lot of people will say, well, we don't want to invest in these because we can't fuel them anywhere. And then the fueling people will say, well, we're not going to build fueling until we know that there's demand. It's got to come together. And that is a role that government can and should push. Not necessarily picking what technology should be the winner, but just putting out there where we want to go directionally with environmental goals and making sure that the burdens and the hurdles of regulation are protecting what we need, but not being overly burdensome. So that's the transportation sector. If you look at what's going on in decarbonizing electricity, it's about taking technologies that exist today and that are actually getting better, like combined heat and power or cogenerators, where we could absorb all of the wasted energy, the heat, and use it to fuel more of our factories and businesses and homes in the future. And there's more going on from a fuel cell perspective, where we can use natural gas or hydrogen or other clean fuels to power those. We're investing in those, and we're working with many companies here in Kern County to continue to push those along. One that I'm really excited about is, and it's something that people never talked about several years ago, is renewable natural gas. So what is that? Basically, I talked about being out here with some dairies. I walked out in the dairy the other day, yesterday, and you've seen the dairies, lots of cows, a couple flies here and there, and there's these piles. There's these piles, some people would call them poop piles. I thought they were money piles. I thought they were energy piles, and that's going on here. With anaerobic digesters, they're turning manure and poop into energy. They're basically taking the methane that would have been emitted to the environment, and now they're cleaning it, capturing it, and either using it for electric generation directly on the facility, or, as we hope, soon we'll be able to gather it from all the different dairies, clean it, and inject it into our pipelines. So now you've got another source of energy that otherwise would have gone into the environment. Those things are happening now, and there's regulations that are coming out where the government recognizes that we need to encourage this, not discourage potential solutions. The last item that I wanted to talk about, and I touched on, is really more about the future, but there's some pilot projects going on, and that's called power to gas. And again, it's about how do you take that excess renewable energy from solar or wind during times when you don't need it and utilize it. And basically, it's pretty simple. It's using that excess fuel to run a process called electrolysis, where you take water and you separate the molecules of the water, and so you can now have pure hydrogen. Methane is made up substantially of hydrogen. So if you can inject that hydrogen into the pipeline, mix it with your natural gas, and/or capture carbon and create a renewable natural gas, you now have the world's largest battery in your existing pipeline infrastructure. You don't have to go out and build new batteries. So then when you need electricity generation, you've got it back in your pipeline. These are things that are going on in Europe, and we've got 2 pilot projects here. And I was speaking with Laura Lee earlier today. I would love for our first commercial scale project to be here in Kern County. So Laura Lee, let's figure out how we can get something done. That's a challenge. Let me tell you, I'm excited about what's going on with natural gas because I know it's part of the solution. It's part of the portfolio of what we need to do. I worry about costs because when you look at across our state, nearly 30% of all utility customers for electricity and gas require some form of financial assistance to pay their bills. And despite the fact that your gas bills may be low, there's a lot of people that can't afford them. So we're very conscious of what we do and how we manage our system to try to minimize costs and investments wherever possible. But we're also conscious of regulations that put on more costs. And like it or not, when you look at the cost of some renewables, they're higher than what it costs to generate electricity using natural gas. So we've got to look at this as a portfolio again. How can we optimize the costs? How can we optimize the environmental benefit? How can we optimize the job creation so this becomes a win-win-win situation for all? I'd like to think that, and it would be great if we can all afford Teslas and have solar on our rooftops, and many of us do. Well, I don't have a Tesla. I do have I've got sun power, in fact, Bruce, so and it's a good system. But we've got to be conscious of those that can't afford the energy and can't afford to stay in our state. And we are losing companies and we're losing jobs. And a big part of it is regulation, and another part of it is the cost of energy. So one of our speakers earlier today talked about the fact that he spends a lot of time in Washington or Sacramento and talking to the legislators. It is so important that all of you get involved. You saw in this last presidential election that people came out, and again, regardless of who you may have voted for or even in the primaries, there's a passion out there, there's a movement. We need to make sure that all of us and the folks that work for us get involved in the energy movement, that we demand that we have access to clean, reliable, safe, and cost-effective energy, that we don't let the politicians and the legislators basically let somebody else that has self-interest deal with those things. There's always going to be people that have agendas. We have agendas. I'm not going to lie to you. I work for a for-profit company. But I'm also focused on what we can do to continue to grow the jobs that we have, many of them that are here in Kern County, what we can do to continue to be a steward, to mitigate challenges that we may have created from an environmental standpoint, and how we can continue to provide companies like those that are represented here today and residents with clean, reliable, and cost-effective gas. So we're here to talk to you and to help you to fulfill your dreams from an energy standpoint so that you can get done and live the type of life that you want. I'll just tell you that please don't rule out the tools and options that we have available today. Don't think about we're in search of the perfect, because if all you're looking for is the theoretical possibility of what can be done 20 to 30 years from now, we're really going to be writing off generations that need our help and our support today. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions, but SoCalGas is really proud to be associated with the EDC and to support all of you as customers. So thank you very much. And I told the students they cannot ask me questions. All All right, you guys can.
I apologize. I am a student, and I'm asking you a question. You mentioned in your speech the concerns for those who struggle to pay their bills for SoCalGas. Are there outreach programs that perhaps aren't highly as advertised for those who absolutely can't pay their bills?
Absolutely. No, it's a great question. One of the things that we do, and this is in association with the Public Utilities Commission, we can actually provide and install energy efficiency to help homeowners and apartment owners use less energy. But we also have, depending upon what your income level is, programs where parts of your bill could be reduced and subsidized. So it's something that we're very sensitive to. Yes, sir. Where do I see natural gas prices going in the next 5 years? That's the one that I'll tell you, if I knew, I wouldn't be standing here, right? It's interesting. I think a lot of it's going to depend upon the federal policies that are enacted going forward. If you look at where natural gas is priced today relative to where it was 10 years ago, we're substantially lower, and it's because of technology advancements with taking advantage of shale deposits and everything. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of uptick in price, but there's nothing that we foresee that says you're going to be seeing gas prices get back to where they were 10 years ago. There's just an abundance of deposits that are being economically explored now. Our company, my parent company, for example, is building a liquefied natural gas facility in Louisiana because we want to be able to export it. We don't think that in and of itself, the exporting is really going to drive the prices higher, but I don't see the prices changing substantially in the next 5 years.
Hi.
Which is, as a result of that, you're seeing a lot of industry that is extremely energy intensive come back to the United States. The fertilizer businesses and other chemical businesses, they went away when energy costs went up, and you're actually seeing more investment, especially in the southern part of the country. If you're going to be making a 20 to 30 year investment in a factory or a facility, you've got to have a view, and I think that view is energy prices, both oil and natural gas, are going to stay relatively stable. Yes?
Hi, I have just a quick question. One struggle that I have with renewables is that there is a high initial fixed cost. But once you make that fixed cost, it's a sunk cost, and the marginal cost of wind and solar is zero, and it looks like the marginal cost of natural gas is definitely not zero. Mm-hmm. So how does these sort of weird economic facts play out for the gas industry that, especially in California, where we're going to have a 50% renewable standard, 50% of energy with zero marginal cost?
First of all, you need all forms of energy at all times. I really believe in the portfolio theory. And it's really no different, hopefully, than most of you have in your own financial portfolios at home. If you put all your money into Facebook, you're probably feeling pretty good, except on days when Facebook goes down. And the question is about, from an energy perspective, an energy portfolio perspective, there are times that the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow. And what do? Today, even though we're starting to invest as a society in more batteries, they're still not cost effective. And so you do need reliable base load generation on the electricity side to be able to complement what's going on in the renewables. And I'm a total fan of renewables. I mean, Bruce knows I used to work for SunPower, and I've been on the wind side as well. It's not an either or, it's an and. And the question is, depending upon what part of the country or in the state you are, it could be a slightly different answer. So if you look at it from a cost perspective over time, natural gas facilities for electric generation are still one of the lowest costs. And if you look at solar's costs continue to come down because of the efficiency on the manufacturing side, but also on the installation. And I think the expectation is that they're going to continue to come down. So again, it's not an either or. I think it's an and how do you build a portfolio of safe, reliable, and clean power and natural gas that can serve us all? Yes. Laura Lee.
Laura Lai.
Lie, excuse me.
It's all right. So on the base power, so after the last electricity crisis in California, two of the largest baseload natural gas plants are in Kern County, and we're very proud of them, La Paloma and Sunrise. They are coming to the end of their life, and because of new rules, they may not be able to be reconfigured the way they are. And I'm hearing that peaker plants could be a solution. Do you have any thoughts about that? Because we want those plants in Kern County.
Sure. Peaker plant, or just to put everyone on the same perspective, if you're looking at base load, these are generation plants that basically run and provide a minimum level of energy at all times. I mean, if you look at your electric bill now, you know that there are certain times of the day where you use more. And the question is, how do you service that peak need? Or do you build more base load, or do you build peaks? And the cost of peak generation is continuing to improve, similar to what's happening in solar. So it used to be that peak plants were primarily fueled by diesel and other things, and now we have more efficient peak generation from a natural gas perspective. So I'd say it really depends upon where you are within the transmission grid, what your needs are, and because there are now very efficient small peakers as well as the larger ones, and things are getting better there. I do think that going forward that batteries are going to help. They're very expensive today, and those will provide some of the, or help address some of the challenges that we have from a peak perspective as well. Yes, sir.
Trevor DeMeo with Chevron. As we all know, energy efficiency is one of the cheapest forms of energy, and California is one of the most efficient states in the U.S., but I was wondering from a baseload perspective for natural gas, particularly for industrial users, what is SoCalGas doing to promote energy efficiency, both on the commercial and the industrial side?
It's a great question because I agree with you. I think, from an energy efficiency standpoint and conservation, that's the best way to bring down, first of all, to help the environment and to bring down your costs. And over the last 25 to 30 years, we've been a leader in working with communities, with businesses and residents to help them make their homes more efficient, to help install windows that don't have leaks, to make sure that their water heaters were the most efficient ones out there, to looking at what's going on with space heating and everything. So there are more things that everyone can do, and not all of them are expensive. The question is, do you know your energy usage? What's going to help more on the conservation and on the efficiency side is now that companies like SoCalGas and PG&E and Edison now have smart or advanced meters that can actually give you more information real time about your energy usage. So whereas before you would have just received a bill at the end of the month and it was $40 for your gas and $200 for electricity or whatever, now you've got during the day, you know what's going on. You know that, if you're running your dryer or you've got your heater on or your pool heater, you know what it's costing you, and you can make more efficient decisions. And down the road, when we get real-time pricing for electricity, you're going to make your decision, do I want to wash my clothes when it costs me $4 in the afternoon, or am I going to do it after 9 o'clock when it's $2? So technology and more information is helping us become more efficient and more, energy savvy, and and I know that Chevron has been a big part of energy conservation as well. All right. Well, that means I get to enjoy my dessert. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.